Let's head to the Antarctic and check on Outpost 31. Let's get into it. Back to my channel. Hope you're all doing well out there. Today we're going to talk about the first film in John Carpenter's Apocalypse trilogy. But before we get into it, like, comment, and subscribe. Join me here. I greatly would appreciate that. Today we're going to head to Antarctica and talk about John Carpenter's The Thing. I watched that beautiful 4K disc last night for the first time. And if you haven't gotten it yet, it's on sale today for Prime Day for, I think, $11. The transfer is absolutely gorgeous. They did a top-notch job with it. Highly recommend it if you're a fan of this film. But let's talk about it right now. This film came out on June 25th of 1982. It's rated R. It's an hour and 49 minutes long. Had a budget of $15 million. And upon release, sadly, it only made $19 million. It got lambasted by the critics. Unfortunately, fans did not like this film at the time. And John Carpenter lost his job on Firestarter. It was supposed to be his next film. He got kicked off of that. Although we did get Christine out of that unfortunateness. But still, I would have liked to have seen what John Carpenter would have did with Firestarter. Now, this was John Carpenter's first major film. Carpenter was just coming off of the success of Escape from New York. Now, the remake of this film had been kicking around since the 70s. Universal had commissioned Tobe Hooper and Kim Hinkle, who did the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, to come up with an idea to do a remake of the 1951 Howard Hawks directed film, The Thing from Another World, which is based on a short story called Who Goes There? Now, when they finally, that fell apart because nobody liked the script, and Carpenter, coming off the success of Escape from New York, got offered this by Universal. Carpenter didn't think, he's a huge fan of Howard Hawks. He didn't think, he really likes the first film, so he didn't think he could really bring anything to it or top the first film until he realized that the script was, they were going to go more towards based off the short story, which really intrigued him. And the other thing that really intrigued him was he wanted to bring the monster out into the light. As Carpenter likes to say in any interviews you've ever seen with him, back in the 60s and 50s and 60s, keeping the monster in the shadows was considered the thing to do, the classy thing to do. Carpenter's idea was, what if we bring the beast out into the light so you see it in all of its glory and all of its horror? And he found a makeup effects artist who had worked with him on The Fog that was game enough to go there with him, and that special effects artist was Rob Bottin, the great Rob Bottin, who was coming off The Howling before this, which those effects are pretty damn spectacular as well. Cast-wise, to go on this journey with Mr. Carpenter was Kurt Russell plays MacReady, although Kurt Russell was the last one hired because he was helping Carpenter think of actors for roles, and he had no intentions of starring in this because he didn't think he was right for it, but Carpenter convinced him and he came on board. He was the last one hired. Wilford Brimley plays Blair in this film, and Keith David plays Childs. This was his first credited film role. This role almost went to somebody else, but Keith David came in and knocked it out of the park. He's great as Childs, and he would go on to work with Carpenter again, and They Live. Now, this film is about 12 men at a research facility in Antarctica, and right in the beginning of the film, we see this helicopter chasing this dog across the snow, and this beautiful shot. This film was shot by Dean Cunny. John Carpenter, once again, reteaming with his cinematographer from Halloween and The Fog and Escape from New York. And it's beautifully shot, and we see this helicopter chasing this dog and this guy shooting at it, and we happen upon the American camp. And they end up killing the Norwegian because he shoots one of the guys in the legs and he blows up his own helicopter like a jackass. And they take in this dog, and they don't know, they think they might have cabin fever already or something's going on at the Norwegian camp. So MacReady gets up and goes to check it out, and what he finds is some horrific shit. And soon things go from questionable to all-out shit show at the American camp when we find out this dog isn't really what it appears to be, and in a very incredible effect sequence where the dog splits open and starts to mutate and tries to consume the other dogs. And they find it midway and set it on fire and put it out, and before we know it, paranoia and distrust take over the camp. And from here on out, what we see is a bunch of some of the best special effects you've ever seen on film. Even to this day, they hold up incredibly well, and they're way better than the CGI effects in the prequel because those effects look like dog shit. And we get that great ambiguous ending with Childs and MacReady sitting there with the camp on fire. It's cold as hell. They're sharing a drink, and that's how the movie ends. And we don't get to know if either one of them are the thing. And it's a great, awesome, ambiguous, dark ending that Carpenter does so well. And that is John Carpenter's The Thing. Now, what to like about this film? Well, the effects are top-notch. Some of the best makeup effects of all time. It was a game changer in the effects industry. You had American Werewolf before this with Rick Baker's great effects. You had Rob Bottin's awesome werewolf effects in The Howling, but this really changed the game in the 80s. Obviously, you had Tom Savini with Dawn of the Dead and then his masterpiece Day of the Dead, the Friday the 13th series, but this really was a game changer for makeup effects. And Rob Bottin knocked it out of the park. They actually spent $1.5 million on the effects, which was way more than Universal planned on. They were going to only budget $700,000, but Carpenter Bottin said, no, we need more, and they ended up spending $1.5 million. Now, the Dog Kennel Scene, Stan Winston had Rob Bottin personally asked Stan Winston to come in and help him with that effect because he was so bogged down with these other spectacular effects that he needs some help. Matter of fact, Bottin was so dedicated, he was sleeping on set, and partway through the production, he had to get hospitalized. He just drove himself to be so ill from exhaustion, and he had pneumonia and whatnot. The cast here is amazing. Now, there's not a woman in sight. It's all 12 men, like 12 angry men. But everybody has their own part to play. Some guys get more screen time than others, but we do really get the sense of the dynamic of the group. McCready's kind of like the quiet, loner, tough guy. He doesn't want to really be involved too much with the group, but he ends up getting sucked into this situation because it is life or death. Wilford Brimley's great. Keith David's great. The rest of the cast is fantastic. There's some great character actors in this film. And they, like I said, we do get to know the dynamic of the group as the film goes along. And this movie Carpenter definitely cranks up the paranoia and the distrust amongst the cast. And even us as film watchers, as you're watching the film, especially if you've never seen it, if you've only never seen it before, you really don't know who the thing is. And as things unfold, it is quite shocking upon your first watch. But between the effects, the atmosphere, the score by Ennio Morricone, which is definitely Carpenter-esque, and Carpenter put little bits of music in there or sounds in there himself as well. The direction, the way it's shot, the way it's framed, the way it's lit, the way it's acted, it's just one of the best horror films of all time. And at the time, it got lambasted by the critics. I mean, Carpenter really took it personally. If you ever seen interviews with him about this film, I mean, they were calling him like the purveyor of violence or the pornographer of gore, and they were calling it some of the worst trash ever, and the fans really didn't embrace it. E.T. came out that summer and had everybody flying high because it was a positive alien film, and here you had this dark, nihilistic alien film with not a happy ending in sight. A matter of fact, the studio wanted Carpenter to go back and shoot a happy ending, and supposedly he did shoot an ending where Kurt Russell was rescued, and we see him get the results back from his test that he was not an alien, and he's sitting in these offices. But I've never seen that. I don't know I think he said it. I think I saw an interview with Carpenter said he did film it, but he had no intentions of ever using it. He always liked the more ambiguous ending, and that ending sells this film. So I'm glad Carpenter stuck to his guns and stuck with the darker ending, more ambiguous ending. Now, they shot on location in Stewart, British Columbia, and Alaska. But they also shot for a while on sound stages in LA, and they brought the sound stages down to 40 degrees so you can see the actor's breath and make it look like it's cold, because he wanted everybody to feel like it looks like they're freezing. All the actors are freezing. This is John Carpenter's personal favorite of all of his films. Rob Bottin was only 22 years old when he did this film, which is amazing to think about. Now, long documentary on the 4K. It was on the old DVD and the Blu-ray. It gives you pretty much all the information you could ever want about this film. This film, even though it started off bumpy and critics panned it, it has been reevaluated. Now it is considered by many to be one of the greatest horror films of all time. I happen to agree with that. I've always loved this film since the first time I saw it. Between the paranoia, the suspense, the atmosphere, the acting, the effects, the score, just a great film. And I would give The Thing a 9.75 out of 10. Yes, a 9.75 out of 10 for that baby right there. What are your thoughts on this film? Leave a comment down below. Let me know. Hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, share this video. I would appreciate that. I will be back soon with John Carpenter's second film in his Apocalypse trilogy. But until then, bye.